And welcome inside episode 56 of Breaking Bats, presented by Not For Long Media. My name is Justin Ayers, and I am joined, as always, by the man himself. It is Ryan Ripken, back off a 2-week hiatus off the pod here, but it's always great to have him back on Valentine's Day. So neither of us are wearing red, but the spirit of the holiday lives on. Ryan, how are you?
I'm good. Well, yeah, we didn't get the memo for the red. We could have coordinated better. But has it really been 2 weeks? It's been 2 weeks since I've been back on. I feel like, man, I'm leaving you hanging. I'm sorry, but it's always a pleasure. Glad we could. And even if we don't have the colors, love's in the air. I got to say something corny at least,
Yeah.
But I do hope that people, you give your appreciation to the ones around you. It's a small gesture, but it really does mean a lot to them.
Absolutely. So with this being episode 56, I had to make this the Darren O'Day episode. Recently retired Darren O'Day, or 56, I think almost his entire career. There might have been a stretch where he didn't, but what a relief pitcher. What a find for the Orioles. I think he kind of bounced around a little bit in Texas for a little there. Really solidified himself as a dominant relief pitcher. Darren O'Day is the man, so I had to make him the episode for today.
It's the perfect fitting, right? And which is it's so great. And when we talk about it is, everyone's got a different story of how they get there. And traditionally, when you look at a pitcher like Darren O'Day, you'd think, well, can he be that effective? Because it's different. And you don't see as much of the different type of style pitchers that are in Major League Baseball, especially nowadays where you feel like it's a lot of high velocity and just great stuff, high velocity. So what Darren O'Day did, and especially during the time where the Orioles were in that the meat of their run, it was cool, and hats off to him on a great career.
Two things stand out to me when I think about Darren O'Day. I think about that time he did the weird video where he talked about how he rode a unicycle. You ever see that, where he has like the solo powered unicycle, and also his feud with Jose Bautista. So I don't the first two things, other than like his like on the field stuff being awesome, but like him and Joey Bats didn't like each other. So those are my two recollections.
Yeah, honestly, I don't have an exact moment per se, but I was just looking up with his numbers and I was remembering, I'm like, he had some years where he was extremely dominant. I just found him in 14 and 15. He had sub 2 ERAs. He had a 1.7 and a 1.52 in back-to-back years in 14 and 15. And he was an all-star in 2015. Guy was lights out. And that was at age 32 years old, making his first only all-star appearance. I love that. Like, I just love that because of the grind that he went through, and he was able to have a very long and stable MLB career. So hats off to O'Day on his next chapter in life.
Our generation's Chad Bradford. Big, if you're a Moneyball
fan.
Yes.
Chad Bradford. You know
also
what?
Oriole.
Also, it was interesting. I dusted off the webs of MVP Baseball 2005. I saw it circling on Twitter, and it was talking about certain players, and I brought up that Melvin Mora is like a cheat code in that game. If you want to play with him, Melvin Mora, old third baseman for the Orioles. But I remember then I dusted it off and played around played a game because I'm like, I need to get back into it. I was feeling extremely nostalgic, and I felt like I was missing out again. And sure enough, I'm playing the Oakland A's. I believe Bradford's on the Oakland A's that year, and there it is. There's a submarine, and I couldn't figure him out in the game. It was frustrating. I think I lost 3-1, but so it's bringing back it's bringing back nightmares now, I guess. Or should I admit that at this age I'm going on and losing in a video game to the computer?
No, okay. That's one of the best baseball one of the best sports games of all time, MVP Baseball 2005. That I played the hell out of that. I had it on GameCube, so it was that was how long ago that was. That console was legit. But yeah,
GameCube was legit, and I'm still to this day. I know people love MLB The Show. MVP Baseball for me just hits different. Maybe I'm just a different generation now.
I liked it. I'll piggyback into that generation because I feel like that was still like in my wheelhouse. Like, it was that, and it was a 2K baseball with Gary Thorne.
Oh, yeah. And also Gary Thorne on the call, by the way, is just no one better. He's great.
I love Gary Thorne. I hope he's doing well. I don't know if you saw it. We're just one last tangent, and then we'll get into what we have for today. Gary came back and did a couple Mets games in 2021. I don't know if you remember this. He like filled in for like
Mhm.
the regular play-by-play guy. They were in Pittsburgh, and it was like Gary, and I think it was like Keith Hernandez. And Gary kept accidentally saying the Orioles instead of the Mets. So he was like, and now batting for the Orioles, he's like, oh.
Hey,
So
he had a long run. I mean, he's a staple, and especially in that industry in baseball and for the Baltimore community. You turn on a game and Gary Thorne's on the call, exciting moment. It just goes hand in hand. And I was sad to see him go. I think who they brought in, McDonald and Brown have been great. It's no knock to it. It's more of it's an appreciation for Gary Thorne. That's all it is, an appreciation for Gary Thorne.
absolutely. Big game voice. He's the best. So like I said, we have a lot of stuff to talk about today. But before we get to all of that, this episode is brought to you by Som Sleep. Som Sleep is the scientifically advanced Som snack, includes ingredients that are naturally found in your body to help you sleep better at night. All you have to do is drink it 30 minutes before you go to bed, and your body will naturally calm itself down. Other sleep supplements leave you feeling groggy in the morning, but not Som Sleep. Go to getsom.com, click shop, and enter the code BATS at checkout for 10% off of your entire order. All right, on the news category this week, we have a couple things. The San Diego Padres are back in the news. They signed somebody else off of free agency. They're addicted to signing guys off of free agency. This time it's Michael Wacha, kind of the last big-ish domino, I guess last big pitcher because Profar's still out there. But it's been an interesting career for Wacha, former first-round pick, excellent in St. Louis, was an all-star at one point, bounced around a little bit, but really reestablished himself last season in Boston, pitching to 11 wins and a 3.32 ERA. He figures to be the number 4 man in San Diego behind, of course, Darvish and Musgrove and Snell. This is a pretty good rotation for the Padres now. I like the way that stacks up. How do you kind of view San Diego's rotation now with the addition of Michael Wacha?
Well, first off, it's just a straight disease the Padres have for spending. It's
Love it.
is it can it be stopped? But it's exciting, right? Like the Padres, if people haven't gotten the memo, they're all in. Look, Wacha, he established himself, like you said, last year, and he fits right in. He's not going to be asked to be one of their top guys, but he's going to be asked to fill a role and to be able to provide some stability on the back end of the rotation. And also, too, he's got the upside to he could outplay then what people are kind of predicting. So he clearly has the ability to be successful. He's shown that. He's proven that. Or the Padres team, this has been, I know we're going to talk about it more, but this has been a great offseason for the Padres.
When we talk about all the spending that they've done in San Diego, I mean, obviously Xander Bogaerts coming in is the big one, but also like there's a lot of like role player kind of like 1-year deal, like Matt Carpenter. We talked a lot about him on this podcast. Nelson Cruz, Seth Lugo, Adam Engel, not a free agent contract, but they extended Yu Darvish for 6 more seasons there in San Diego. So like you said, very active this winter, but I like it. I like the Padres a lot, but obviously when you talk about them in the West, everything's kind of like measured against the Dodgers and what they're doing. If you roll out the Dodgers rotation of Kershaw, Urias, Gonsolin, Syndergaard, and Dustin May, is there a clear advantage, or are they kind of evenly matched there?
I always think it's going to be more evenly matched, and also just looking at the Dodgers track record. If you look at what they've done and what they've accomplished, their pitching staff, their coaching has been spectacular for being out there. And as exciting as the Padres have proven to be in the last year with the spending and obviously going to the NLCS last year, there are expectations and their pitching staff looks like they can, but like to your point, you can't count out the Dodgers, can't count out their pitching staff because experience matters. Being in moments has mattered. And the Dodgers have been the most consistent team, in the NL West for the last decade.
I'm fascinated to see how this is going to play out this season. I'm trying to watch so many of their games, but 1 through 3, I think the 2 teams are pretty even, but then 4 and 5 of Syndergaard, Dustin May. I like Dustin May's like pure stuff a lot. But I think he's coming off that injury. You don't really know what you have in him. And then Syndergaard is just kind of like a very league average, good, but not great pitcher. So yeah, I'm excited to see how these 2 teams kind of fare all the times they play each other this year. Cause there's nothing better. That might be my new favorite rivalry in baseball is Padres and Dodgers. Let's keep that going.
It's definitely spicing up. And for the while, it felt like Dodgers Giants, which is still obviously a big rivalry out in the NL West, but it got chippy and it's going to play into it this year. And with these moves, and a lot of these moves for the Padres are motivated to overthrow the Dodgers and to no longer be the little brother of in that relationship. So, it's exciting to see. But I will say this: the Dodgers do have a knack of bringing guys out there and putting productive seasons. So that's a storyline that we should definitely watch as the season goes on.
Absolutely. So the next thing I want to talk about was some rule changes coming to baseball. So MLB announced a few kind of new notes on these things. In all regular season extra inning games, a runner will be placed on second to start the 10th, and every inning after that until a winner. Bringing back the ghost runner, quote unquote. And also, this is an interesting one: position players pitching. Position players will only be allowed to pitch in extra innings or in the ninth inning for a leading team that is up by 10 or more runs, or any time for a trailing team that is down by 8 or more. So this is obviously, I saw there's 132 instances of position players pitching last year. That was up from 32 5 years ago. I didn't realize that the upward trend we had been on. I felt like I have seen a little bit more of like the backup outfielder coming in and pitching, but I didn't realize it was that much of like an epidemic. How do you feel about these? Do you like the ghost runner? And then do you like the position players kind of getting axed there from throwing a lot?
It's crazy to think with I'll start with the position player pitching. Like, it's definitely happened way more. And initially it is exciting. Like, I remember when Stevie Wilkerson came in and came in for got a save in that situation. It's different circumstances, but I think there is to a point that I think it was being used too much because teams were saying, you know what, we don't want to waste arms. And I get that concept, but you do have a ton of pitchers and you also have a ton of guys in the minor leagues. I just think from a competitive standpoint, let your pitchers pitch more. And if the game is out of hand, then by all means, let your position players come in. And I don't want to sound like the Grinch with that, because I do think it's fun, but I do think that there's a certain aspect to respect. And as far as the extra innings, honestly, it makes it a lot easier for the players as far as the length of the games. And that was a big thing. I was against it initially, but after experiencing it in the minor leagues, and especially, I tell you what, when you have an extra inning game and then you got to get on the road and the game keeps going and going and going, it taxes everybody. And even for fans, for the fans that stay, it's an awesome experience if the game goes 18 innings, if like you can be like, I was there, but not a lot of people are staying through that either. So I think overall it's good. And correct me if I'm wrong though, in the playoffs, it's all off, right?
That's a great question. I'll have to go back and double check that.
I think it's off. I think it's only the regular season. So in that, it's like with the NFL in that case where they changed their rules for the playoffs compared to the regular season. I think the same thing would apply once it's go time in the playoffs. You can't have it be decided. Oh yeah, well, because last year the Astros Mariners scoreless until the 17th or 18th inning, I believe. So look, it's going to help the game for the season, and it's going to keep extra inning games exciting.
It's funny you mentioned the Astros and Mariners extra inning game, because I literally was trying to find the box score from that. They ended up having to use like Robbie Ray, like starting pitchers came in at the end there. They obviously didn't have to resort to using position players, thank God. But in the position player pitching one, I'm a little upset that that's kind of like being rolled back now that I think about it. It's like, well, first of all, like why is the way managers are being like, how come MLB is like, hey, managers, we're going to tell you how to manage. You can't do that anymore. Because I just think that guys like Stevie and Charlie Culberson, like there's some legit position players that can throw 80s, 90s, like, and that they could have the opportunity to come in when it's not down by 8 or up by 10. I don't know. I just feel like we may be putting too many restrictions on the way that, guys can manage their ball clubs there. So I'm not a big fan of that. The runner on second base to start extras, I kind of fall into line with that, where I'm like, if you can't win it in 9, let's just try to get this thing over as fast as possible. Like, you can't be having games going 18 innings on the reg. So I'm more okay with that than I am with the position player one, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get that. I will say this though, for the extra inning part, I get it. If they had done, the 10th inning, we're just going to let it play out, and then the 11th we put a guy on, I think that would have been fine as well. But again, it's a long season. A lot goes into it. And a long extra inning game requires a ton of stress and strain on your team, which in some cases, if you're trying to keep your team healthier and everyone intact, it's great for guys if you're coming up in the minors though, because then they'll probably need more arms if the games happen. So I always am happy for guys that get their opportunities. But as far as for the overall betterment of the players and their safety, it's the best move for that. Yeah, pitching, but last thing I'll say with the position player pitching, it's interesting that managers were so into that nowadays, because you're talking about an uptick of what it's been. Back then, 20 years ago, this really, I don't remember or recall seeing a ton of highlights on those situations. And maybe that will be another history lesson to go back to. It's definitely a different time, but I do think also if you have some pitchers, let them pitch. But to your point, I mean, it is a fun time to see pitchers go out there, or sorry, position players go out there and mess around and maybe even hurt the feelings of some hitters if they strike them out.
I would maybe put a caveat on that to say, like, only good position player pitchers, like Albert Pujols, should not be pitching. But like
No.
Charlie Culberson, who throws 88 with a cutter, yes.
Yeah, that's fun. Like, go watch his highlights for those who are interested about Culberson throwing. It is really fun to watch.
Yeah, he could be like, he can have like a second career if he wanted to as a pitcher full time. But I forgot about this. But this came up today because the manager of the Red Sox was talking about this. The new MLB bases, they went from being 15 inches square to 18 inches square.
Pizza boxes.
He said, "Wait till you see them. They look like they're a pizza box, to be honest with you." I saw them online. They look gigantic. Is that a good or a bad thing for somebody who hasn't played the game at the level you have?
So in 2021, they implemented that right after COVID, and it was weird when you look at it and you're around the base. This thing is absolutely massive, and you're like, this isn't going to work. It just looks goofier. That's what you think, but when you're playing the game, you really don't think about it. Actually, I have a really big foot, so it helps me a lot when I was trying to press off and to be able to expand my range, which helped me as a first baseman. But as far as safety wise, it does help a lot. It helps with guys diving back in for tags. There's more space even for the runner and first baseman. And so it does look goofy, but after, the first week, it's second nature. I'll tell you what, though, what really threw us off is when they switched the bases back. And then everything looks so microscopic. And I'm saying, well, how am I supposed to navigate around that? Like, you have to retrain yourself. So I think it's a simple thing where it's going to look goofy initially for people, but it really is not going to be a factor as far as, and honestly, I think it will be completely fine for the game.
I mean, I've seen guys get like their ankles stepped on at first base if they're like running, especially like pitchers coming over to cover first and they're like running. They don't have enough time to get their feet exactly right. Like, I've seen that happens fairly ish often. So anything to cut down on that, I feel like would be a welcome addition.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, the game, we talk about this, the game's better when you have the better players playing on the field, and there are some bang plays at first base or around any of the bases, and that cause some serious injuries, and whether it's ankles, hands, or you name it. And I mean, I personally, again, it doesn't help having a big foot, but I can't tell you how many times I've been stepped on at first base. But on the it does it feel good? Absolutely not. I have a few other words that come out of my mouth during that process because you're angry, but I don't, sometimes, the runner's running down the line and it's a hard thing to deal with. But the other case too, and the scary thing for the runner, if he's trying to get his foot out and he's trying to, bust his butt down the line, he lands on my foot. Yeah, it hurts me, but also it could do some serious damage to him. And then you have two players in trouble. So I think it's gonna be fine, but I can't wait to see more of the pizza memes, pizza box memes. I think I actually got one just sent to me on Twitter, which I think is great. But rest assured for the baseball purist, it's really not going to make a big difference. It really isn't.
maybe a little more stolen bases. They cut down the paths between bases by like 7 inches. Or I don't know. They cut it down. It's like a little bit less than a foot, but they're like, oh, it's going to lead to a boom in stolen bases. I'm like, is it? I feel like as a game, we don't really steal. We don't have that many like Ricky Hendersons running around.
Yeah, I think honestly for that, it's going to be you just got to be you got to be more technical on your tags at second base. You know, you can't. It's less wasted time, but I don't think there's going to be a huge uptick. Just
Yeah.
reminds you if you think so, be on time getting to second base if you're laying down a tag or wherever it is. So don't let them steal it. And I think I don't think it'll be an uptick, but we'll have to. We'll like they say the old saying with drafts, like draft and follow was an old thing back in the days. We're just gonna have to track this down, and we'll follow what the results happen.
Yeah. Updates to come. Yeah. Make it like a local news tease.
Yes.
So another thing that happened, I guess over the weekend now, I think it was on the 12th, was that Ted Lerner died. And Ted Lerner was he obviously is known for buying the Washington Nationals back in 2006. I think his title is like managing principal owner. But he is really, really responsible for a lot of the things around DC. One, where Nationals Park is, for those guys who haven't been there, it was put in the area called the Navy Yard, but before the stadium was there, it was like warehouses and it was like really like run down and there wasn't a lot going on. But when they built the stadium there, it's like the coolest, hippest, like most awesome neighborhood in the city now. So there's a lot of great things that obviously happened with that. And also the Nationals under him, they had this great run of success from 12 to 19, like 4 division titles, a World Series in 19. But I think the one thing that I'll always appreciate Ted Lerner for was just like his willingness to invest in the ball club, his like willingness to like build a relationship with Scott Boras and sign free agents like Jason Worth and Max Scherzer, and even like breaking out the checkbook to sign his own guys like Zimmerman and Strasburg. So rest in peace to Ted Lerner. Obviously, Ryan, as a former Nationals organization member yourself, how do you want to remember Ted Lerner?
Well, I think especially for Nationals fans and the community in the city, you brought life and excitement to the area. You brought a lot of great memories to a place where they were, people might not think, but DC really does care about the Nationals. And at the time, it was rough in the beginning. Make no mistake, the early years of the Nationals was rough, and it was the complete rebuild. And to see how it all was built up, and to take that risk of moving the team out of Montreal and bringing it to the nation's capital, I think did a lot of things for not only the game, even though I miss the old Expos, jerseys and whatnot. But the bigger thing was it brought baseball to a city that loved it, was happy about it. And then to your point, he invested in the team, and to see the evolution of it and to finally see it pay off with a championship, a few years back was really special. So very sad. He lived a long life and accomplished and made a huge impact, in many ways. But for Nationals fans in the DC area, very grateful that he was willing to bring the team to them and provide so many, great memories for so many people.
Absolutely. Yeah. 97 years old, Ted Lerner. So,
Mhm.
lived a full life. I was reading this whole like Washington Post article about him today where it was like baseball originally, like the Expos didn't have any money. So they moved them to DC, but they didn't have a new owner. So it was like '05, the team just operated without an owner. So in
Yeah,
'06, when
that's
they're
right.
both,
That's right. Yeah.
when the process was going on of like picking a new one, they wanted somebody that was local to the area and that kind of had like a low profile, which is one of their like qualifications. And that was Ted Lerner, DC native there. Also, George Washington University alumni. So,
Shout out to GW.
yes, exactly. So yeah, very, very sad. And also the team's just kind of in this weird state of like, they're exploring selling, but I don't think anything's come of that. Or maybe they're going to do like a minority sale. I don't know. There's a lot up in the air with the Nationals, and they're in a deep rebuild. So, not sure what's going to happen with that. But yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty to come, I feel like.
Yeah, a lot of uncertainty, but I think I forgot about the '05 vacant year, so I was a little bit off with the whole timeline there. So my apologies. But I think what struck me out, or what struck me the most then, because now it's all coming back, the expectations. Think about that though. With the vacant year, you want to bring someone else in, and that that much uncertainty to a ball club, to a major league team, when it's a relocated ball club and you're trying to find stability. And he provided that for that team, which then you saw what they were built up to. And we talk about all the time. You can look at team success by the way that the ownership helps to handle the situations and scenarios. And under the Lerner family and under Ted, they were able to create not just a solid baseball team, but transform from the top down into a championship level, World Series team.
Very well said. So the last thing we have, or actually the next to the last thing, we have one more quick thing after this, off-season review. So I figured this would be a fun way to kind of wrap up the offseason. Like I said, there are not that many big free agents left on the market anymore. Everybody's kind of got their place. You're seeing photos of guys down in Florida and Arizona, unpacking the trucks and getting out there, and guys are arriving today. So as all of that's going on, we wanted to do like an off-season review. So we're going to kind of put these into two categories. I was thinking about maybe putting a third in there, but I wanted to do winners, obviously, but instead of losers, because I feel like that's a harsh term, maybe just like needed to do more would be a softer way of approaching that subject.
Right.
I think that's fair, right? Because you're like, we're going to look back at this in 6 months and we're going to call, like, if we called somebody a loser, they would be winning. So that's just how my life.
Oh yeah. Well, and it's exciting to say who the winners and losers are, but to your point, you got to go out and play the season. It can look great. You can feel awesome about it. Injuries can happen, and then you can just underperform. So who knows? But we'll talk about what we thought at the moment, how it looks. We'll go with that. Who looks good right now, and who needs a little bit of help?
I'll run through my list, and then we could talk about the winners part of it. I have 5 teams or winners, big winners. I have the Phillies, the Padres, the Rangers, the Yankees, and yes, the Pittsburgh Pirates. Those are my winners. We could talk a little bit about each one of these. I mean, the Phillies is easy because you go out and you spend all this money on Turner. You get, they're added to their bullpen, which, was kind of a concern there for a while, and Matt Strahm and Kimbrel and Soto. Harper's out to the All-Star break, but I feel like this team did enough to qualify as, I don't know if they're like the winner of the offseason, but they're one of them.
I mean, look, right now, sorry, you went out for a second. What was the last part?
Harper's out to the All-Star break, but I feel like they did enough to maintain that high championship level of caliber.
Yeah, I thought I wanted to make sure, and yes, I'm getting a little bit older, so the hearing and with the Wi-Fi. But anyway, right now, what the Phillies did and the Padres, the two teams that were in the NLCS, there's no reason to believe or to fade them going into this year. I mean, right now, you got to think that they're in position to be right there, in some cases better. And as we learned, just with the expanded format with the playoffs, it's making sure that you're healthy and you get in and you see what happens. And right now, those two teams on paper look poised to build off of their strong 22 campaign. So I think you're spot on with those two teams.
I like that. I like the Rangers a lot. I did a whole video about why I think that, I'm drinking the blue Kool-Aid this year in Arlington.
Yeah, you are.
I mean, adding Jacob deGrom. I mean, I don't care what the health is. You can nitpick it. Say, he's not, he could not be healthy. It's Jacob deGrom. He's one of the best right-handed pitchers of our generation. And then they added Eovaldi and Andrew Heaney. Plus, they already added a bunch of guys in the offseason before this. So I love the Texas Rangers. They're a big winner. The Yankees, obviously, because they had to go out and re-sign Aaron Judge, which they did. And they also got a top-tier pitcher in Carlos Rodon. The Pirates one's interesting, and I don't know if people agree with me on this one, but this team had no expectations. But the GM, Ben Cherington, went out and he spent a little bit of money this offseason, surprisingly, on guys like McCutchen, Carlos Santana, Rich Hill, G-Man Choi. I think they traded for him. But still, the team wasn't expected to do anything, and they did something. So I call that a win.
To me, I'll start with the Pirates. I think it does a ton for the organization. I don't know if it's going to make them the more competitive, but I will say they're bringing veteran presence and leadership to a young team. And for that reason alone, it's valuable because the Pirates are still trying to figure it out. They're still on the cusp, but make no mistake, they have some really appealing pieces. And I think that's where, when you're seeing these these free agents or new acquisitions, that makes it exciting. So I'm with you on that. For the Rangers, yeah, you add Jacob deGrom. His biggest question, obviously, staying healthy, because we know when he's on the mound, I don't think if you can maybe make a case if you want to say, you like Verlander, you like Scherzer, you can pick out your favorite pitcher. But for me, deGrom to me can't fall behind very far. And honestly, healthy to me, I'm taking him over anyone right now. The only issue, and they've added the other pieces, right? The Rangers, like, here's the thing now. They added the manager, they added Bochy. You have this roster that's ready to go. They are now going to have to show up, and it helps that the Mariners are getting more attention. It helps that the Astros are still there, but this is not going to be an easy road. They have every piece now to do it. Now, can you do all the pieces fit? And if all the pieces fit, your blue Kool-Aid theory is going to work out very well this year.
Very well said. Yeah, and you're exactly right. Yeah, I didn't have the Mets on here because don't get me wrong, Justin Verlander, he's going to be good, but he's also like 40 years old. And like they brought back Brandon Nimmo because they had to. Mm-hmm. Like Kodai Senga, like, what are you going to get in him? I don't know. There's a lot of unknowns and a lot of like question marks with them. And I don't know. People are going to say, well, like, we're the Mets. It would have been different if they actually would have followed through on Carlos Correa. I would have put them as like the big winner of the offseason, only because they spent $1 trillion. But that's why I didn't have them on there. I can run through the teams that needed to do a little bit more, though, because there's some interesting ones. I have the Dodgers, the Giants, the Rays, and the Red Sox. So 2 teams from both divisions there. The Dodgers, they lost both Turners. They lost Tyler Anderson, Craig Kimbrell, Gallo, Bellinger. And then they only really added was Syndergaard and JD Martinez. So not 100% sure what they're doing there. The Giants, like, again, there's a common theme with all these. The Giants lost a lot. Rodon, Longo, Brandon Belt, like, and then all they really added was like, a couple good pieces here and there. Mitch Haniger, Sean Manaea, Jock Peterson. I think they brought him back. But, you get what I'm saying. The Rays, for a team that was so offensively challenged this past year and in the playoffs, they would have given a left arm to score some runs. I don't know if they can just rely on bringing Brandon Lau and having him and Wander Franco come back healthy. I don't know if you can rely on that to fix everything. And that's kind of felt like what they did. And also they gave Zach Eflin $40 million. So I say that, but at the end of this year, probably going to be a Cy Young candidate because it's Tampa. And then the Red Sox, they booed their own ownership and GM because they didn't re-sign Bogarts, and they just kind of signed like role player-ish guys to fill the void. So those are my 4. What do you think?
Yeah, when you look on paper, obviously, it looks like some of those teams, I agree, some of those teams could have done more. I'll start with the Dodgers, though. The Dodgers, to me, and the Rays, I'm not worried about with them. And it's mainly because we're talking about ownership and organizational structure. Both those teams have done a tremendous job. The Dodgers still have a lot of great players. And talking about, finding yourself again, Syndergaard going out there, he's a guy that it's not like this lack of talent. Things have kind of fallen off, injuries here and there, but now you're landing in a spot where pitchers that have gone out there have had some success. The Rays, which still gets me, the Rays last year with all the injuries and Wander Franco was out for some time, and you're right, their offense was not at times the most productive, but there the Rays were again, just right in the thick of it because they're so well prepared. So those teams I'm not as worried about. The Giants do a good job, but the NL West is tougher, and the same point goes to the Boston Red Sox in the AL East. So for those 2 teams, I feel a little bit more. And again, their organizations are strong, but you got to look around to your competition. And recently, have you done enough to put that back? The Giants, obviously, 2 years ago had a great year, but it was a down year. Can you bounce back with what's happened? To be determined. And the Red Sox, pitching's going to keep you in games, but your pitching has to be healthy because there's going to be questions with that lineup, and the AL East is no joke. So I'm with you. But of those, like, I understand your point for all of them, but I'd say of those 2, I'd have the most worries about the Red Sox and the Giants.
Sometimes it's not the moves that you make, it's the ones that you didn't make. think
Mhm.
that's how it goes. The Giants missed out on obviously Carlos Correa. He was the initial team that they signed with and then didn't follow through. And then the Red Sox, I heard that they lowballed Bogarts by $120 million compared to what the Padres gave him. And when you're the
It's a
Boston
very
Red Sox,
it's a sensitive
it's
subject in Boston.
yes.
It's sensitive.
Yeah. And I guess to make it an even 5 on each side, I'll put the Orioles in there. I mean, I like Frazier. I like the trade for Cole Irvin. Give me a star. Spend a little money. I think their payroll I think it still might be behind Tampa. And I think it's almost exactly what they were at last year. So Michael Elias's comments last summer about opening the checkbook were for naught. So to make it an even 5, I'll throw Baltimore in there.
Well, there you go. I mean, I'm still with the point of I never was expecting this giant spending spree in Baltimore. I think it was always a value if the value was right, but the team did get better still, and the success of the Orioles is going to hinge on the young players developing. And this, to me, this year initially was supposed to be we're going to make the jump, but last year was it? So now there's high expectations for the Orioles, where they're exciting, but are they fully going to be ready? And to your point, are they going to have all the pieces ready to do that? Time's going to tell.
Last thing before we let Ryan get out of here for this week. We had a feel-good moment. It's, of course, brought to you by the sponsor of the Not For Long Media and Breaking Bats podcast, Original Fudge Kitchen. 6 locations in Cape May, Wildwood, North Wildwood, Stone Harbor, and Ocean City to visit in person. Or if you want to visit them online, it's fudgekitchens.com. I saw this on MLB.com this morning. So Bryce Harper was hanging out in the Super Bowl in Phoenix. He was in the Phoenix airport, and a fan asked him to sign his hat, but whatever marker they had just didn't show up or work or whatever. And then the only thing it would show up on apparently was, so Bryce Harper took one of his shoes off and signed it and gave it to the fan. And so Bryce Harper's wife posted a video of him on Instagram walking through the airport with no shoe on one foot, just sock. Probably the most disgusting thing you could do in an airport, but a feel-good moment nonetheless. Would you take your shoe off and give it to a fan if they're really like, Ryan, this would make my day? Can you sign something?
I definitely consider it, because you never know. And it's a great story. And to your point, he definitely made that fan's day. Is it the most conventional thing? No, I hope Bryce had another pair of shoes down the road, because traveling from an airport to another airport, another destination, that's a lot of travel, one shoeless. Oh yeah. Yeah. But I mean, those are the fun stories, right? Like it makes you laugh. It makes you smile. And, that's what it's all about. So for that reason alone, absolutely, I would consider doing that.
There were white socks too, it looked like. So those probably turned a disgusting color of like
you might
black
just
brown.
You're going to throw those socks out after this trip, but definitely worth it.
Ugh, yeah.
Nasty.
So, hey, I respect it, Bryce. I respect the fan interaction part of it, but I'm not walking around a public transit facility without a shoe on. So, I don't wonder how that turned out later, but that's all I had for this week, Ryan. Thank you so much for hopping back on with us. We'll have to get you on again next week.
Of course. Always a pleasure, Justin, and happy Valentine's Day to you.
Happy Valentine's Day to you too.